Welcome, everybody. This is Scott Strode, Blue Chips Global and Postplay Media, LLC. Today, we are with assistant coach of Lebanon Valley College, Brad Karli. But first, let me remind you, June 13th at Milan Park, we are having our first annual interstate high school team shootout. Along with that will be a very small but powerful unsigned senior event that will take place on two of those courts. But that is June 13th. Get a hold of me, 304-771-3488, and or Isaiah Francis. His name is on the flyer if you see it, and we'll post it here in the text of this video. So, Coach Karli, glad to have you in. This is you're one of the guys I wanted to get in pretty early on this because we've had a little bit of back and forth, and you're one of the guys that likes to recruit West Virginia, at least the Eastern Panhandle. So welcome in, and let's talk a little bit about your place in basketball and how you got there, where you started, and all that stuff.
Well, thank you so much, Scott, for having me, and honored to be on your podcast here, and really excited to share with everybody listening a little bit about me and Lebanon Valley College and kind of what we look for in young athletes that are searching for the right home.
Sure.
So, as a young child getting into sports, my father was a football coach. So I can remember being 2 or 3 years old and walking with him. He actually also did some announcing, so he would go on the field before the game and talk to the coaches about pronunciations. And I'm this little guy with my eyes real big looking at these big kids and their football uniforms on and the smacking of the pads and the Friday night lights. So, sports have always been something very important to me as a little guy, as well as 2 older brothers that always beat the crap out of me. And I really didn't have a choice to be tough and to kind of hold my own with sports at a young age. Scott, you probably remember this, but most of your audience probably does not. But do you remember that electronic little football?
Oh, absolutely.
With the stubs. So as a little kid, my parents used to tell me that I ripped the bottoms of those off so that I could move them accordingly how I wanted. So I would sit there in the living room and I would just kind of draw up football plays and different positions and different teams, and I'd be hours and hours and hours. So that was something, again, I think at my early stages of my life, coaching in sports was going to be a part of it. Again, as I mentioned, my dad was a football coach, but he actually went to college at Colgate. He was recruited for football, and he was an art major, which is kind of a little strange combination there. You think of a football, rugged, tough guy and not an artist, but it was pretty neat. It was pretty cool, and he was very successful there, and again, went on to coach high school football. Met my mother, who was a beautician. As I mentioned, I have 2 older brothers. One, the oldest brother, was actually flying an airplane before he was driving a car.
Oh,
so he now flies corporately for the 76ers.
Wow.
Yeah, so pretty cool. And he buzzed the house when he was younger and tipped his plane, and it was pretty neat to see that. But he knew what he wanted to do early on. And then my other brother is actually a physician, a doctor, and he studied kinesiology and regenerative medicine. He actually lives near Messi in Miami, and does a lot of the PRP type treatments and stem cell research, and he's done a lot of pros, and really is amazing what he has done and the research that he's done with helping people with injuries. So that was kind of my sports background. I went to high school, played 3 sports in high school at Cedar Crest in central Pennsylvania, basketball, baseball, and football. Then went to Elizabethtown College, where my middle brother went, played basketball at first and then also baseball for 3 years there as well, and then went right on to the coaching staff there at Elizabethtown College. So, again, sports was in my family. My brothers the doctor and the pilot kind of had their sense of directions. They were in sports, but it just engulfed their life in a different direction, whereas mine was sports. And I did get a degree in business administration.
Good deal. Good deal. So, tell me a little bit about your time since you've been at Lebanon Valley, and how that all started, and what's kept you there for this period of time, and just kind of the different things that you've experienced while you're there as a coach.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it dates back to kind of how I got involved in coaching, which will help kind of solidify these a little bit as far as answering to your question. So I started at Elizabethtown College right after I graduated from college there with Bob Slosher, who is a legendary coach there. He's the all-time winningest coach in school history. We won 3 consecutive league championships, 3 NCAA appearances. We were 29-3 and played in the national championship game in 2001, 2002. And just fell short. We had a 12-point lead against Otterbein with about 8 minutes left, and we just ran out of gas. So I was really fortunate there to coach. Out of my 11 years there, 9 of them we were playoff teams. We did extremely well there. Really fortunate to coach some great kids, both on the floor and also in the classroom. Then in 2009, I went to Bloomsburg University, where I was coaching as well for 6 years there with the program. They were 4-23 before I got there. We kind of turned things around and made the playoffs 3 out of 6 years. Were co-champs in 2011, 2012. Had some pretty dynamic players. One, Christian Mordelite, who is the all-time leading scorer at Bloomsburg history. Really neat story. Was a walk-on. Came redshirted and really developed into a big-time player. He scored over 2,000 points, and just an awesome story and a great kid. Larry Webster was another one who ended up playing 4 years of basketball and then played 2 years of football and got drafted in the NFL and played in the NFL. He was 6'7", 225, and ran a 4.5 40, just an incredible athlete. So it was really neat to experience there, and just another great place with good tradition and academics. And then I actually got out of coaching for 2 years, moved to North Carolina, kind of went through a divorce, which was difficult. So kind of went out, figured out myself a little bit, and had some friends in North Carolina that helped me get through it. Missed it. And then Coach McAllister called me up and said, "Hey, I got an opening. Do you want to get back into it? Would love to have you." Came back in 2017, 2018, and that's kind of what led me to LVC. My parents are still living. They're in their 80s. Still come to games, not as road games as much, but they're always there in the same spot, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, Coach took a chance on me. We had a pretty good group coming back. Sam Light and Andy Orr were 2 extremely talented players. Sam ended up playing overseas, and Andy had a chance to. We finished 18-10 that year. We won the league, and just an awesome team. We were seniorship heavy. We had 6 seniors, and they understood their roles, which was pretty neat to see that with 2 dynamic players. And as far as academics, the school is phenomenal. Andy Orr, one of the kids I mentioned, all academic All-American, and then had some regional and district honors on the hardwood. Was also a Jocelyn Awards winner. Not a winner. He was a finalist. There's only 10 people across the country. Usually it's Amherst or Tufts or Williams or Hopkins or somebody like that. Andy was a finalist in 2017-18. And again, we're proud. I say that because we're proud of the academic side of it as well. So that's kind of what got me to LVC, and then I just stayed there. I mean, Coach is again another guy that was an incredible mentor to me. He just retired this past year after 32 years at the same school, which is pretty incredible. He had some opportunities to leave. Marquette was open. His boss left and had a job at Marquette, and he was going to go with, but LVC opened up, and it was after legendary Pat Flannery, another unbelievable coach and good man out there. took over the reign, and Mike Rhodes was his point guard, which was a stud who is now the Penn State head coach. So, that's kind of what got me there. And again, just the rich tradition, the academic side of it, and certainly the kids and the players and the winning tradition.
Yeah, that's cool. All of that being said, like, especially, guys staying put where they're at your level as opposed to leaving. I mean, and I've talked to, several Division III coaches, and, what is it about that draws you in and kind of keeps you there? I mean, there's got to be something that, won't let go of you to allow you to, it seems like there's just a difference there with that level as opposed to, I don't know, if it's loyalty or if it's just, more of a family, sense with the faculty and the kids, or, what do you think that is?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things, Scott. I mean, you hit it right on the head. It's the family environment, number one, and the people that you're around. I was taught at a young age, try and surround yourself with, successful, positive, like-minded individuals.
Sure.
And so at LVC, that's what's kind of kept me there. And if you look at my track record, I spent 11 years at Elizabethtown College, same environment, same thing with a great mentor who did it the right way. Bloomsburg, I was there for 6 years. Coach John Sano, good man, good coach, was there for, I think, 12 or 13 years. Good people there. The athletic director, Mike McFarland, is just an unbelievable guy and does a great job leading that team there. So, again, another family environment. And then LVC is, it's the people. It's the people that you work with every day that you want to come into work. It's not really even work.
Right.
Shoot, Scott, I get to coach college basketball for a living. I mean, I get to wear sweats and, hoodies and things like that to come into work, life isn't that bad. It's pretty darn good, but it certainly is the people and the kids. I mean, these kids, I think we do a good job, and we've done a good job. And a lot of great coaches. I mean, you look at the Division III world all over the place, those guys have stick and stayed for the most part because of what we're talking about, the family environment, the kids, the administration, small school environment, right? The kids get to know the professors and vice versa. They come to your games. They know who you are. You can really create a strong connection and relationship to help them with networking down the road too. So I think that's why, and certainly winning, right? Everybody wants to win, and, having the facilities that we do at Lebanon Valley, which, competes with a lot of smaller Division I and D2 schools, we got a pretty great product there. Yeah.
For a long time, that's the only thing I knew about Lebanon Valley was I thought they probably had the nicest gym in Division III in the whole country, and that was just that was all I knew about it until we had a couple interactions with you. But that's unbelievable. I in talking to these Division III coaches, it does seem like even the younger guys are comfortable, where they're at, and there's not such a, grasp at trying to climb the ladder. They're just, they're just trying to learn the game, learn their craft, if you will. And, I noticed that, just kind of in the temperature of the conversation, maybe not so much here, but when I'm talking to them off camera, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to climb the ladder, but it's just kind of the shape of the conversation. You can just kind of tell, what's on their mind when they're talking about, what they're doing and where they want to go and what their goals are and all those types of things. So,
well, it's interesting, Scott, you brought up a good point there too. Within the dynamics of these D3 structures, you get a lot of coaches that stay in other sports too. Yes. So now you're kind of going back and forth and learning things. What do you do? How do you do this? And everybody's kind of one team, and it allows you to do that. Whereas,
Right.
like Penn State, Mike and James Franklin, like they're just so engulfed in their world, and it's
Yeah.
hard for them to even try and connect that way. So I think that's also for these young coaches that are getting into this. That's why they kind of don't want to jump around a little bit too, is because they're learning in-house from very good people and successful people right there in their institution.
Right. And, I feel like, too, it's probably a little bit insulated. Well, maybe not a little bit, but maybe a lot insulated from the, where you've got the portal and the NIL stuff, and maybe guys can just relax and learn to coach,
Yeah.
speaking of, the younger guys and,
And the pressure, the pressure is not quite there. Is
right.
Lebanon Valley versus Penn State, Michigan, Duke, whatever. The pressure to win is not as is demanding. It certainly we all coaches want to win, but
Right.
it isn't. That pressure is just I couldn't even believe it. Having to try and reshape your team every single year now because of the portal and the
Yeah.
way things are, and trying to be good quick and veteran guys and trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. We have that at Division III, but not quite to that
Right.
extent.
Yeah, yeah, and you can just keep drilling down and doubling down on trying to just find the best, highest quality character kids to come in and play for you, and and build a program, and that's got to give you an extra hour or two sleep advantage over the guys at the next the next levels up, I would think.
Absolutely, without a doubt, without a doubt. However, the sleepless nights are when you are at our level and you develop a guy to be a very good player. Sometimes you'll lose that player
Yeah.
with money and scholarships and things of that nature. So it is a trickle-on effect, even down at our level.
Yeah, and it's kind of like I think that's that way with anything. If you're doing your job and you're doing it effectively, you're going to have that's just going to happen. It's a natural part of it. Probably just like an assistant coach that comes in and they're they want to climb the ladder and they do everything right, and the staff has done everything right with them. They're going to get that chance.
Yeah.
But so I'm sure it doesn't help your sleep patterns at times, but it is kind of like, to me, if I see that, especially if it's a winning program, it's kind of like, it's kind of like a flag of, hey, there's something going on here that's good, because these kids are actually getting developed,
Yeah.
and getting developed quickly.
Yeah, and I think too, Scott, what holds a lot of Division III guys too is the academic side of it as well.
Yeah.
Whereas, a lot of our guys, are lucky, fortunate to play overseas professionally, but most of them, if you look at the numbers across the board, they're getting a job because they have some debt and they need to pay off their debt, and
Yeah.
they want to make some money and that kind of thing and get into a workforce. So, I think that certainly is another thing which plays into the factoring of why kids maybe don't want to jump, to this place and that place and
Yeah.
play at the highest level, because, they want to get an education there as well, number one.
Yeah, it's getting the education still. That's still the main objective, I guess. Keeping on, speaking about Lebanon Valley, what are things that we need to know about the program that parents, prospects, high school kids that might listen to this, what are some things that they need to know? Some things that they might find interesting, or things, I don't want to say you'll be able to sell them one, but the things that they might see or they might find out that, like, that's maybe a clincher, maybe that's but it's maybe enough to get them interested. What are some things you think? I mean, obviously the gym, and for those of you listening, look up Lebanon Valley. Just go to Google and put in Lebanon Valley basketball and look at their arena. It's pretty fantastic. But what's your what are the things that you think personally that
Sure.
that
Yeah, well, I mean, again, following Coach McAllister, who's a legendary coach, and what he's done there, I think, what I've tried to do to hold the fort down here until whoever the next coach is going to be, the head coach there, is three priorities, Scott. We always talk to family and recruits about three priorities. One, academics is number one. I mean, you never know when the game is going to be taken away from you. I had a kid at Bloomsburg who tore his ACL 3 times, twice on one knee, and then got a staph infection. And then his mother actually passed away from pancreatic cancer while he was at Bloomsburg. And
Jeez.
Ironically, the kid, just perseverance and just willingness and a great family, got through it all and is extremely successful in international business and played overseas a little bit too. So what a great story. But, academics, and that's what I tell, all these families and these kids, even now at high school, like, work on your grades. It's important because, you never know when your last day is, as far as basketball wise. And you can always, your mind, I always tell people, your mind lasts longer than your physical ability to play.
Yeah.
Right? Like I now play golf and maybe bowling occasionally, but it's usually through Wii.
Right.
But, so academics, number one, was our priority. Number two, athletics, obviously, as we mentioned, and, our guys work hard. We don't get, 4 or 5 star All-Americans. We get really good kids and talented kids, and we try and develop them into the best player that they can be. What I've learned throughout my journey and from my mentorships, are certainly work ethic with kids. I mean, we want to try and develop them to be a well-rounded player because they are making the decisions in the game. Right?
Right.
Coaches make a few decisions, but at the end of the day, these players, when they're out there, they're making more decisions than we are. So we want to try and do our best to create, a well-rounded player. And if we can do that and we can understand kids, we try and identify their roles, put them in strengths of who they are and what their abilities are.
Sure.
That creates for championship level teams. And then socially is the third thing at Lebanon Valley. We live in a safe environment there, awesome school campus, beautiful campus. You mentioned facilities. We have strength and conditioning coaches. We got shooting guns. We got compression pants. I mean, we got Vertimax. We got all the bells and whistles, nutritionists that you can have, which, again, makes it a great place there. But socially, we have Hershey right down the road, which is 15 minutes. So you have the park. You got the stadium. We have rural area, but like I said, Lancaster's not too far away too. Harrisburg's right there. So centrally located, we got a little bit of everything. So we encourage our kids. We do a lot of community service type projects to keep them engaged in the community and giving back and learning that so when they go on in life they can kind of continue to do those things and make a difference in their communities. So we press hard on those three priorities in that order because what happens is over the 26 years that I've been coaching, when kids mix up that order, and we've had kids throughout the way, I mean, that have mixed up that order. Maybe they put social 1 and, put academics 3 and they put all their time in, hanging out and having fun and not understanding how to take care of their time management for the first time, away from home. In the gym all the time and not in the library or getting work done, then they become ineligible and now they're fighting to kind of scrape to try and get back in there. So we do a good job of really trying to hone in on that. And to be honest with you, we like to recruit kids that have a high GPA right off the bat. So that way, we know that we can count on them. They come in, they know what they need to get done. We obviously do, especially in the first semester, that's the toughest for freshmen. We do a lot of mandatory study halls that, help them get acclimated to college life and get that down. And then as far as some of the other, qualities and values that we have at our program is, effort and attitude are critical. That's some of the things that we look for when we're recruiting kids is, kids that are diving on the floor, kids that are hustling, not just putting the ball in the basket, but just giving everything they got at both ends of the floor. Having good attitude, right? College basketball is a game of possessions more than high school, right? Yeah. You remember probably in your days too, you pick up 2 early fouls, you guard the kid over there in the corner that doesn't shoot very well and just sit in the paint and hold off till the halftime, right? You can't do that at the college level.
I usually sat by the coach.
Yep.
after
Yeah.
2000.
Yeah. So, that's, attitude. We want to see how kids, handle themselves when maybe they're not making shots or they're getting some
Yeah.
fouls, and being able to handle adversity, which they're going to face at the next level no matter where they go. Certainly competitive. We want kids that want to come in and compete, get after it, work hard, work on their trait, fall in love with the process. We talk about that a lot in our program.
Yeah.
A slogan that we use is win the day. I think
Yeah.
that can relate to life, right? Not just basketball, but
Absolutely.
you wake up, you have a choice, right, Scott? You can either be
Yes.
happy, motivated, or you could be upset or whatever, but you have that choice every day you get up in the morning. So we talk about winning the day, and that's, going to class and participating in class and studying and getting good grades and, knocking that paper out or that test out or, coming and having a great day of practice, or whatever
Right.
that is, family, calling a family member you haven't talked to in a while,
Yeah.
just to see how they're doing. Those are the winning the day. And if you win a couple days, that leads to, championships.
Yes.
And that championship behavior is what we talk about. So, and then finally, the last thing that we really try and do, in creating our culture and environment is control what you can control.
Yeah.
Again, these young kids are coming up into a really tough life, harder than what you and I had it growing up. With
In a lot of ways, for sure.
Social
certainly
media and COVID and all this stuff that they had to go through. So we really do a good job of mental toughness and again just trying to control what you can control. So those toughness, like things that I look forward, toughness, basketball IQ, skill, physicality, attitude, relationship with coaches, and then parents.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. We want to bring in great families that want to come in and really help make their son successful in life and lead them in the right path.
Yeah. I think so much of that is, things that lead you to creating good habits, and almost, well, not almost, but, part of it is creating good habits in your general lifestyle.
Yep.
Or that lead to good habits in your schoolwork and lead to good habits when you get in the gym and and that's one of the things I've tried to kind of implore in my own kid. Just create good habits. Like you said, win the day. First thing is get up on time as soon as your alarm rings. Just get up and don't snooze it. Don't just get up, attack it, and hit the ground running. Like that. That's just one of the things you just have to learn to do. And when you do that, life becomes that day becomes a lot easier. And then you can worry about doing all the rest of the things that come after.
Well, it's so important. Like what you said, like getting up in the morning and having breakfast and stuff, because these kids first semester, they're getting 8 o'clock classes. They're not getting, those upperclassmen,
Right.
They know who to take and which classes to take and what. So you're going to have to learn to get up in the morning.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I talked to Coach Martella from Franciscan, and and we talked about just the how kids progress and as humans and just develop as adults while they're in in these programs. And I told him, I said, you couldn't be anything but a pretty high level human and an extremely employable young adult. Once if you play 4 years of a Division III sport, like you've got to be. How could you not be? With that kind of structure that you have to have academically and athletically. And just knowing, a lot of them knowing, I'm paying to do this, to some degree.
A lot of money too.
and some of it's a lot of money.
And it's not getting cheaper anymore.
No. So, that kind of love for the game, passion for what they're doing. I mean, it couldn't be anything else. And you mentioned, you got to you do. This is. I don't know how you explain this to kids and parents, but you have to love the process. Like you have to Kids I talk to, like if you don't enjoy going to the gym on your own, doing the extra stuff, like if you don't enjoy that part of it, you're not going to enjoy anything
Yeah.
after high school, especially.
Yeah,
And you're
because
probably not.
somebody is, right?
Yeah,
So somebody else is
yeah,
embracing that process that can take the
yes,
spot.
absolutely, absolutely, and that's something that there's probably 100 of those somebodies out there that can take your spot. So like I said, if kids don't enjoy that, that's college sports isn't going to be for them anyway. So, but yeah, very very interesting.
Yeah, it's funny too, Scott. Just what came to my head there too
Yeah,
was how many guys, probably the majority, right? Because you can't have 16, 17 all Americans on your team, on your roster at
right.
the same time. But how many guys come back, and say, "Hey, coach, man, God, I wish I would have listened to you and gotten to the gym more, or gotten to the weight room." And I do myself. I look back at my career. I was actually a better baseball player than I was basketball,
Yeah,
but the pace of the game was just too slow for me,
yeah,
and so I'm a high energy guy, and that's kind of the route that I went. But yeah, looking back, it's like, God, I wish I would have kind of went into the gym a little bit more, hit that weight room. Whereas there are a lot more resources now too, right? Because a lot
yeah,
of guys have training coaches and
yeah,
fitness guys, and even the internet. You can go on and find
yeah,
out workouts,
yeah,
and you can control your own destiny with that. So that's huge, especially for incoming kids, young kids coming into college. They're 17, 18-year-old kids. They're not developed yet physically. Like, they're
right.
still
Yeah,
blossoming. So, you got to make sure you get ingrained in that early on, and work on getting stronger and quicker so that you can come in and compete right away with those kids.
yeah. It's I mean, it goes beyond saying. I mean, it's so important to be. Like with my own kids, we just told them like it's, if you're not gonna lift in the off season, it was never a problem with them doing it. But like, and sports is off the table. Like, you're just that you can't do one without the other.
Yeah.
And well, I mean, you can lift without playing sports, but you're not going to play sports without being in the weight room and
And they're long seasons, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not just lifting to get stronger, but it's also preventative
Yeah,
from
and that
injury.
was that was our whole purpose was, we prevent the injuries and especially the nagging injuries. We did go through one broken arm
Yeah.
with my oldest son, but but we never had those nagging knee injuries, shoulder, what I mean, joint injury, those types of things. With any of those guys, now they might have them when they're my age or
Yeah.
your age,
Right.
but that it just hasn't been there, and you can only attribute it to one thing. And then my youngest boy is still in school now. I mean, he lifts year round.
Hmm.
He lifts all through basketball season. Always lift through football season, and then he lifts whatever off season he has, and then they go in at 6 a.m. in the morning and lift before school and basketball season. So he's even elevated even more. So
Those are
some people,
championship behaviors, Scott. Those are the championship behaviors that you look for out of young men.
yeah, it really is, and there's I won't say that every kid does that, but there is a nice group of them that take pride in don't being the exception, I guess you could say, and kind of trying to lead by example, I guess.
Well, and that's
for that.
that's something that I think over the years too. In my career, that's what you look for too, is that natural leadership out
Yeah,
of kids. Which we talked about it. This is a harder world to live in for these kids with social
yeah,
media and everything, and bullying and all the topics, mental health, which is huge right now too,
yeah,
and the pressure. So those leaders that are doing these kind of things, if you can find them and they can rally the troops together, that's
yeah.
that's when you got some special groups, and that helps them in life, not just basketball.
It does. Yeah, it does. And when you can lead, and this is what I think of when I think of kids that come through a Division III sports program, and I'm not saying it's only that. It's obviously all divisions, but just the grind that is, like I said, that is Division III, and you're paying along, as you go. You're, all of these things, but you're doing all of the things that everybody at Division One and NAIA and everywhere else does. You're doing all those things, I just think, that builds so much character, for kids that, when they get out, things are easier, because everything becomes easy because you are a leader, and I think things are easier when you have those leadership,
Traits.
traits
Habits.
about yourself.
Yeah.
Even if you're not in a leadership, position, you don't, you're comfortable with, because I think you understand both sides of it. But that's just me. I just think
No, you're absolutely right. And again, that's the win today philosophy, right? Like,
yeah.
You have to go to class. Like we make guys are going to class. You're paying a lot of money. You're going to class
Right.
to get educated. Because in the workforce, if you say, well, I don't feel like going to work today, 2 days later, nah, I don't feel like going to work. You're going to get fired. You're not going to have an income, right? So, so you're right. Those kids, the priorities, the love of the game, the love of education, and a great social experience, I think, are what help make kids, well-rounded and successful after college.
Yeah, and I'll add one more thing to that. And one of the things I try to really, really drill in with kids is, and I do this in a lot of different ways with them, but you have to be proactive in everything. And early on, you are, especially in high school, that you're proactive with whatever it is you're doing. That's attached to you being an athlete and part of your sports journey. It will make your process much easier, much more enjoyable, and your recruiting will start earlier, and it will be a much better process. If that's
Absolutely.
what you're choosing to do, and
a lot of kids, first semester, again, they get so excited to be there, but they're also males, right? And a lot of males have that inner toughness, like I don't need help, or the resources are there.
Yeah.
They just don't know maybe where to go or do it themselves.
Yeah.
Whereas that's, again, what we try and do is help guide them in the right direction early on. But the proactive guys, the natural leaders, they figure all that out, and again, that helps them down the road in life.
It does, for sure. Kind of rolling off of that, I mean, we might have answered this question in 37 different ways already, but what are some things that you're looking for? We know all the off the court. We've just covered probably every personality trait that you could possibly look for in a player. What are the things basketball wise? This is probably what people are more curious about, maybe. Well, what are the things that basketball wise that when you're walking into a gym, and you're just let's just say you're walking into an AAU, and you may or may not have a list of guys you're going to watch, but what are things that catches your eye, things that you're looking for if you just sit down and watch a game, and size, ability, what are those physical things that you're looking for?
Well, a lot depends, I think, of what your recruiting needs are going into the year, right? This particular year for Lebanon Valley, we have a pretty much primary young team. We have 4 returning starters back. From 3 of those 4 were freshmen. 1 was a sophomore. So we got a young group of guys, and so I think looking out there for needs, whether that be size, if we talk about post players, which there are not too many of them anymore, and there's not a lot of kids that even know how to throw the ball in the post, which is not taught, and it's hard. I get it, right? Like kids. It's physical in there, and sometimes you work so hard. It's even with our guys, they're in the post and they're working really hard. They don't get the ball, and they get they can get frustrated pretty quickly, especially as young players.
Yeah.
So we'll go in and again, if our need is size, which at our level we're always looking for size.
Sure.
And again, I look for kind of a couple things. One, toughness. We talked about that before. If you're a post player, are you shying away from contact? Are you,
Better not be.
yeah, right, right. Are you siding the post? Or are you just playing behind? I mean, unless you're 7'4", right? And
Right.
playing behind and you can alter that shot, that's one thing. But so, that toughness and, even handling ball screens and setting ball screens and those sort of things, being able to step out inside and outside, developing a right hand hook, left hand counter, simple moves, or a little touch around the basket. Like those sort of things, I think are what we look for, because we do a lot of kind of high-low. Like we like our 4 and 5s to be able to be, perimeter guys that can put the ball on the deck if they have to, but be able to score on all 3 levels. And still be able to make a move with their back to the basket. You don't have to make a lot. You really don't. I mean, guys in the NBA don't have 9 million moves. They have one go-to and one counter usually.
Alonzo Mourning only had one.
Right, exactly.
He can do it both ways.
Kareem, right? Everybody knows what Kareem's move is. But that toughness, we look for that. And then in guards, like scrappy guys that are going to, guard the ball and pressure it without, fouling and just diving on the floor, loose balls, clapping guys' hands. Basketball IQ, I think, is one thing that I like to look for too. Again, we talked about earlier, it's not just the guy that scores 27 points and that's the write-up that everybody says, but the guy that, has a good IQ that gets guys involved. Maybe, very rarely do you see in those write-ups of those events, this guy had 12 or 15 assists.
Yeah.
Right? Or, 25 rebounds, something like that. So, having basketball IQ of how to be able to put themselves in those positions and be accepting of those, we look forward to that. Fundamental skills. Something that I'm a stickler about is passing. Maybe because I was a point guard, I had 2,000 point scorers on my team at Elizabethtown College. So as a point guard, I became a distributor. So, a great pass leads to a great shot, and the percentages speak for themselves. And so, I look for a guy that can make good passes and the right pass and right on the hands if you're a shooter, and, fake one to make one, and the little things to get the ball in the right spot. Skill, certainly skill. We want guys that can dribble a little bit, not just totally one-dimensional guys. I mentioned physicality, attitude, is something else. And then here's some other things, because, again, at our level, we're not getting maybe the most polished player on the floor, right? We're getting, kids that maybe have a little bit deficiencies in one area or the other, or maybe they're right-hand dominant that, when they come to college, we try and make that, both ways so that you're harder to guard. But relationships with coaches and teammates, I think that's something also, too, is it's very important in a winning culture and a winning program to have guys that are coachable and that are good teammates. I think that's something that we look forward to too, because some of these higher end AAU programs and even high school teams, we're not looking at the top 6. We're looking at 7, 8, 9, and 10, which are very still good players. So those are the things. Is a kid looking over to mom and dad and being like, pointing and saying that kind of stuff, or are they dialed in, looking directly at their coach, eye to eye, which is very, very important. And then, needs, I mentioned that before. Do we need shooters? Do we need some athletes that, can get to the rim, slashers, or, get offensive rebounds, or those sort of things? So rebounding, that's something that we struggled with this past year. So, we'll look for whatever our needs are. And then certainly, the basic stuff that you look for, winners and, and parents and families and those dynamics as well, and programs. We like to recruit from winning programs.
Yeah, that never hurts either, because that's usually high, pretty high batting average when you pull kids out of those programs, because they've already, probably already have those qualities that you're looking for. Otherwise, they wouldn't be winning programs.
And speed and strength obviously are critical, right? Like when they come to the next level, we talked about that. They're a 17, 18-year-old kid going up against 21, sometimes 24, 28, right, who knows these days, but men that have grown, in their bodies, and matured. So, speed and strength are something that we look at too.
Do you have? I mean, I talked to Coach Perry, head coach at Navy, yesterday about this, and this really kind of surprised me. But after I thought about it, it didn't. But when he was telling me this, they don't really hold on to like one type of system. That's what I think I asked him. Do you recruit to your system?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, we don't really have a system. We just build a system around what we got, which makes sense with how they have to recruit and the guys they have to recruit. And which is crazy, kind of to hear that in these days. And then you look and they were first in the Patriot Conference. Like, it's pretty amazing. He's either a coaching wizard or, having a system and recruiting to a system really doesn't matter that much, or maybe it's a combination of both.
That's what
I mean, is that something, with you that, like you have a basic offensive or defensive system that you like to recruit guys to? Or is it just, let's get the best guys in here and see if we can mold them into what we do?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think coaches around the country battle that constantly, right? If you were to ask me that question back in the late 1990s and early 2000s when I was coaching for Elizabethtown College with Coach Slosher, we ran the flex. We ran the flex, and in 2001 and 2002, when we were 29-3 and played in a national championship game, I think we were third in the country in scoring, 90.3 a game, something like that. And what we did there is we recruited into the flex offense, and we pressed and we played a lot of guys, and that was what we did. So we would look to bring in guys to fit into that style of play. Then when I got it to Bloomsburg, that shifted a little bit, right? Because now we're dealing with athletic scholarships and kids, a little bit more athletic, stronger, above the rim, like those kind of things, more consistently. And that changed a little bit. Whereas now we're recruiting as much talent as we can, and then trying to put them in places of strength and still have them have unique goals, or roles, excuse me. Yeah. So then it got me to LVC, and it, with Coach McAllister, and I think it's been kind of a little bit combination of both, right? Style of play. You obviously want to have guys come in and buy into what you're trying to do, especially at our level. So, I like to go. I like to run. Obviously, what I've learned in my two other experiences, we want to run. We want the point guard to push the ball up the floor. We want guys to run ahead and throw it up there and be able to have guys that make plays in the open court. That's fun to watch, right? Like, that's fun to watch, that type of style of play.
Sure.
But in order to do that, you need guys that can physically do that, right? So that's where you kind of recruit those needs and those kids that can play that way, but also at the highest level and the most talented, that talent that you can get for our level. So, that's kind of what I would say. I think my style is a little bit of both. I don't have any other than 9 games of head coaching experience where I did get to play or did get to coach. Unfortunately, that was in 22-23 year. Coach McAllister had to step away. He had gotten sick for a period of time, and I came in at the last 9 games of the season. And that was obviously awesome for me to have that chance to really do some of the things that I wanted to do, but yet incorporate all the things that I've learned along my way.
Yeah.
And ironically, the last game of the year, we scored 103 points, which was the 3rd highest in Lebanon Valley history of point total in the game. So, that's again. Sorry to kind of go all over the place, but I think that's a tough question that coaches really continue to battle, is trying to find that combination of both, right? Your style of play, which is important, and the best type of talent. And that's the other thing. It sometimes can tweak. I don't want to say change. I don't think coaches really ever kind of change what they do. They just tweak it based off personnel.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and totally agree. I think sometimes guys do that very well, obviously, and then I think sometimes guys are a little bit too married to their, I don't know if it's their pride or whatever gets in the road of that. It's kind of like, and I think we're starting to get away from it now, but it was kind of I almost felt like it was a bravado thing, that you had to play man all the time in high school. Now, I get it in AAU and in places where you're trying to learn, but it's like,
it's
why would you think that? Nobody's thought that, since the inception of basketball. Why do you think it's that big of a deal just now? Because it's not, and
well, you see it at the highest level, Scott, right? Like Siena playing zone against Duke, and Duke playing zone against them at times. Like, I think kids today too, they don't play against zone enough.
So when they do see a zone, that was, I talked about my oldest son there earlier, and that was his kryptonite, for sure, because he just didn't see it. Never saw it, and that was not just him. It was the whole team.
Yep.
Just because that philosophy was so ingrained in basketball at the high school level, and it was like, I get it, but you got to see both sides of it, and
because even if you're a primarily man team, there's nothing wrong with throwing in a certain zone, here or there to get the other team out of rhythm or give them a different look or those kind of things. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to play it, 50% of your possessions, but a lot of coaches do that, and it works. It works a lot of times.
And nobody cares if you're winning.
Yep. That's true.
I mean, that's still the the objective here is to win. It's not win in style or win with a certain style. Like there's no extra points for that.
I gotta give Joey Gallo at Merrimack credit too. He does that matchup zone, and they just ingrain it into their guys.
Yeah.
And so I think he recruits. We talk about this. He's probably recruiting 6'8" long athletic guys that can cover ground like the old Syracuse days.
Yeah.
So he's been able to figure out both and done very well at it.
And you know as well as I do. We've both been on this earth long enough. This stuff goes in cycles. And it's like you mentioned the flex, earlier. I mean, that's all I did in high school. And so I tease these younger, especially the high school coaches, that think they got to do, the Villanova offense or the whatever. And it's like, dude, it's not, it's the movements isn't, that it's got to be, it's everything else. It's not just what you call it or what the movements are, or just because this school's doing it, you should do, it's just, it's
like
they find out.
Dribble drive. It's like Calipari when he kind of came out with dribble drive and then five out, and everybody started wanting to do that now.
Yeah.
And the game is moved and evolved to a lot of that type of style. But I think it whatever it is, like even the flex, we used to do a lot of different things out of the flex, not just the same old thing, because your own players get less confident because they're like, well, they're screaming out what we're going to do and we're doing this, so they lose belief in it themselves.
I
think that was hard.
I had a really good friend of mine. He said, yeah, we would run flex, but he said as soon as they switch on screens, we have to stop. And I said, no, that's what you want.
Yep.
I said, pin down, and and I don't think he understood what I meant, because he'd never been through that, like I'd been through, like, and that's my point, is like, it's not the offense itself, it's all the little nuances, that are attached to it, and run it skinny, run it wide, run it this, run it that, and it's just all those things.
Circle flex. There's now circle flex where you move it up higher, and it's all kind of things. Yeah.
And I don't know. I just love. That's probably what I know best. Maybe that's why I love it. But it's never died. It's still at all levels of. I've seen it. I've seen high schools start to bring it back a little bit more. And it's never left the NBA. They can't run a whole cycle of it because they got about 12 seconds to get it done. But they do a lot of trigger action. To start their action is with a flex cut, a flare screen, or whatever. And
Well,
then you still got guys in mid-major and up that are still running it.
Still doing it. Yep, duck-ins, like lobs. I mean, you see it all the time. But what I think is it does a great job with, especially early on with younger kids, is it teaches them how to play. It teaches them how to cut. It teaches you how to screen. You have to pass, right? You can, when to pull driving kicks, opportunities, feed to post. So there's a lot of fundamentals and dynamics within that structure of that offense, especially early on in the developmental stages for young kids, that it could be beneficial.
Oh, absolutely. There's tons of all the things that I could talk for a whole day about all the things that you could teach young kids just from that, and in my mind, you can, especially like where my kids play at, a small school, West Virginia, like you can out fundamental people and win. And you can do that at any level, but you can definitely do it at small school, high school. You can out fundamental a lot of people, and you can do it with stuff like that.
Yep.
That everybody can learn. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. Everybody can learn it, and it's not. For the I don't know. I shouldn't say it doesn't take athletic ability, but I just feel like anybody can learn all the little nuances that come along with it. But maybe they can't, maybe they can't pull everything off. But
I think it's the belief stuff, right? Where again, they don't score maybe 2 or 3 possessions in a row, and now you lose belief in this in what you're running.
Yeah.
And then that causes them to break down and not do what you're drilling and I think Coach Schlosser has always said, like, you want to stick with what you're doing and ingrain it and get the players to believe, because if as a coach, your job, the hardest thing is to get your kids to believe.
Yeah.
If they believe in you, they believe in the style of play, doesn't matter what the heck you're running or doing. You have an opportunity to be good because you got the coaches or the players on the floor that are acting as coaches.
Yeah, that's a great point. A really, really great point. Talking about styles and things like that, and I mentioned this morning. What do you think the future of? We've touched on this a little bit. What do you think the future of basketball is? And now that we're seeing this influx of international players coming from the top down at the NBA, and kind of this international takeover, and now we're seeing it with the major power, the power conference teams. It was very evident. I don't think a lot of people understood the magnitude of it until the NCAA tournament started, and they started seeing all these names, with these guys. And I'll be honest, I didn't know, there was so many of them that had, large amounts of international players on their roster. But and I just heard the other day, LSU says they're not going to have anybody but international players. Which is crazy, and that's that's something new, but it may work. What do you think? I mean, where are we at with all this? I mean, this comes down to even an argument. They're using, they're developing kids with an academy style, system over there, and over here we've got AAU and a lot of things that people think are kind of they kind of curl their nose up at and be like, I don't know, I don't really like all of that. But where do you think we're heading? Are we going to start sharing roster spots at all levels someday with international kids, or like we've seen in baseball over the last 40 years, or is this just a fad maybe?
Yeah, I think obviously it's the word that comes to my mind is business. I think the game of basketball and has become more of a business, especially at the higher levels, right? I mean, I never thought the day a school would hire a general manager on staff of a Division I program, right?
Some of them have two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's become more of a business, and then certainly, look, the United States has been kind of, obviously for years and years and forever, has been the basketball mecca, right?
Right.
And so now I think, other countries are starting, obviously, of it's kind of like what we talked about, you and I, before the session here, about, pockets of recruiting. You get a guy in a certain state, like we have a kid from Texas, first time on our roster. That opens up, kind of more potentials to, now they know where Lebanon Valley College is on
Sure.
the map. And so I think the dynamics of basketball, same thing. We've had so many now international kids come over and be successful at the highest level.
Right.
So these other countries are starting to catch up, and they're starting at a younger age, and they're starting
Right.
to develop on their skills and resources and money, because a lot of these guys that have made it are probably going back to their communities and giving back resources and things like that. So these other countries are evolving and creating much better players than they were in the past. So now, again, the NBA dynamics, which is kind of like the staple of everything else, right? It kind of trickle on
Yeah.
down to major Division I, and then 2, 3, and all the way down, right? So I think it now has become a pattern of, there's a lot of good players out there. And, with the portal and, again, technology, now you can recruit a guy that's international, because you can go and see their highlights. You can watch their stream, their games. You
Yeah.
can Zoom and talk to them and see them face to face, so you can create that relationship. So, yeah, it's definitely taking over. And now I think the bubble of the United States of who you can recruit now has gone to the whole world.
Yeah.
And so, it's changed, and you got to learn how to adapt, or you can get passed by. And that's where, you see in the NBA so many more international guys, and even in the draft. The top draft back in the day, forget it. I mean, you rarely ever saw, in the 90s, international guys. I mean, it wasn't there.
Yeah.
And Andy Panko is a guy that played at Lebanon Valley College. He actually played with the Hawks and the Lakers temporarily, and then went to Spain and played in the second best league in the world, and actually never came back, because he had it good. He played less games, so physically it was less taxing on his body. He was a legend in Spain. Everybody knew him, and he had he was making great money, and so he was able to play till he was in his 40s.
Wow.
So that would have never happened probably in the NBA. So again, there's all these evolving different parts, and just the game's expanded to a global commodity instead of just here in the United States, and that's now gradually filtering throughout all levels.
Yeah, that's for sure, and I think we'll continue to see it trickle down, at least through the Division II level. I don't know if it'll get past that, but
And I wonder what they're feeding some of these guys. I mean, they're huge.
well, they're not fresh out of high school either, but
That's true.
and they're playing. They're just taught so much different, and they're so they can concentrate so much on and spend more time, with nutrition and weight training and what their body looks like, and it's just so different. It's just how they approach it is so different. And I had Chaz, or I didn't have him on here, but I had my last phone call I had with Chaz Briggs, former WU player who played internationally, and he was talking about his time in Australia, and him and some of the other players would go to, and work the academies, on their off days, and he talked about how the very, the process that the kids were, from small all the way up, and it was very methodical how they layered everything. And he said, there were some kids that they were 15, 16, and they were better than,
So much ahead.
than a lot of the professional 30-year-olds. He's like, it's just so different. But Yeah, I just think that's interesting and something to keep an eye on. And Coach Richardson from Wheeling, said it best, because I told him, I was like, I almost worry about this. I said, I don't even know what I'm worried about. He said, and he told me, he said, there's nothing to worry about. Just enjoy. He said, whether it's 80% international players you're watching or 10% or whatever, he's like, just enjoy good basketball. It's going to make good basketball, and just enjoy watching it. So, he said it best, and that kind of put it in perspective for me. So,
and look at the Olympics and stuff like that, how they, how people watch them, and the World Cups and all this stuff. So, it makes it, really fun to watch, to see the best players now in the world compete.
It really does. It definitely makes the Olympics a lot more appealing. When you're when it's Spain
even,
versus
right? Even.
Spain versus Australia, and you're like, I'm there might be some college players coming up on that, or actually in it. So it makes it very, very interesting. Hey, Coach, I told you I'd try to keep you to an hour, so we're just a little bit over that. And man, I appreciate you coming on. This has been great. And we definitely need to do this again down the road somewhere, maybe after next season, and touch base again and have you back and talk a little more.
Yeah, Scott, I appreciate the opportunity and love what you're doing with Blue Chips and helping young kids and get exposure. I mean, that's fantastic and very commendable, and I have a lot of respect for what you're doing and helping so many kids out there find a good fit.
Appreciate that. That means a ton to me and everybody that's working with me right now. So, likewise, keep up the good work, and keep maybe go ahead and start putting some of that flex in this fall, and we'll see you in the conference championship after that for sure.
I love it, Scott. Appreciate it. Go Dutchmen.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
All right, take care.